Hi, welcome back to Stock Talk. So I want to talk today on the lesson. I want to spend a few minutes talking about ADX. It's been a little while since I've brought this up, and this indicator is very complex. There's a lot of information that we can get from it. So I want to continue to go back to it on a regular basis and add in nuances to be on the lookout for. So let's go ahead and get into the agenda. I want to discuss low ADX patterns. And I think there's two different ways, at least the way I look at it, there's two different ways to look at low ADX patterns. One is a standalone pattern. It's very important. It has a number of implications for what's going to take place after this low ADX pattern. I use it in conjunction with price, and it can be used in a single time frame. And then the second pattern is actually, I use it in conjunction with another time frame. So it's a 2 time frame pattern, and when I get the low ADX on the lower time frame, so I'll go through that in a little bit more detail and give you a chart example. But both really good signals to be on the lookout for, and something that we can screen for as well. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to go through the stock requests that came through. So that's our agenda for today. Briefly, let me just tell you, my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. While the show is designed for me to provide analysis on your stock picks, what my service provides is my stock picks. I go through thousands of charts. I use 30 years of experience to try and narrow down the list to a workable number that should identify some pretty attractive patterns. So, and also I should make mention that if you want it to do a trial period, go into the coupon code and type in StockTalk for the individual package, and you can get the first 2 months for $50. So let's go now. I want to switch over to the chart, and I'm going to use the Google chart here, and I've got multiple time frames up. I've got a monthly in the bottom left, a weekly in the bottom right, and the daily in the upper right. Those are the ones I want to focus in on. So what I want to do is start with the monthly, and I'm actually going to scroll this back because I want to show you a specific look that I'm trying to explain here when it comes to low ADX. So when I look at low ADX, I like to look for patterns that have been very quiet, doing nothing, going sideways, really haven't had any significant movement in the price pattern. So I'm focusing in on what's going on in price. And if I have like a sideways line where price has really just been moving sideways, it's probably been banging its head on the same level pretty consistently for, on a monthly chart, I want to see at least a couple years. In this case, the ADX dropped down in early 2009 and stayed below through the late part of 2012. So that's a pretty significant time period where the ADX was low. And so when I see a low ADX pattern, a low ADX condition in place, I want to go look at the price pattern. And if I can find something in the way of an ascending triangle or just a regular rectangle where I can draw horizontal lines at support and resistance. Sometimes it is a triangle pattern as well. But my favorites are the ones where we have a flat top and it's a sideways line, meaning the price has banged its head up on this specific area or in a general area. In this case, it's in the 320, something like that for Google. And it kept on bouncing, hitting its head there and then kind of coming back down. Now, the quieter the basing pattern, the better. And so there's a couple things to be on the lookout for. In this case, I wouldn't consider this all that quiet. Now, I can see that it's not quiet looking at the DI lines, because when the DI lines are low, all 3 lines are below 25, then you'll have a period where price is moving sideways, but it's doing in a very quiet manner. And it has, not only this sideways line, but it's also really building up energy because it's really quiet. And so I like to look for that. But if I have a long period where ADX has been low, I definitely am still interested and attracted at looking at what's going on. And if it's gone sideways and we start to get a breakout from that. So when I have low ADX, as I've said in the past, I'm not looking to, I want to see a breakout. I'm not going to jump the gun. I'm not going to buy inside the range. I'm going to wait for a price to break out. And sometimes what I'll do is let it break out and then maybe buy a pullback after that. And other times, if it's a really tight pattern, I might just buy as soon as it crosses above the key level. So those are a couple different ways I want you to think about it. But what's important about this specific pattern is that it usually leads to a significant trend. And so I'm trying to find the stocks that I think have the potential to really go up for quite some time, not just pop for a little bit and maybe make a 20% move and then give it all back. I want to find something that's the start of a trend. And normally that'll be where we have low ADX in place in a sideways line in price, and then we get a breakout. And usually the breakout will coincide with green DI getting going, in the ADX starting to cross above 25, and then we'll have this trending period. In the case of something like Google, obviously it's gone up for a very, very long time since that period. This all started back in the middle of 2012, and ADX has been in command to the upside with a power trend going up. Now go and look at Microsoft's chart on a monthly. Go look at Adobe on a monthly. Those are similar examples. You want to be on the lookout for these patterns because they're going to tell you what stocks have the real potential, significant potential. So that's one thing. Now, so that's one signal, and it's a single time frame signal. I don't need to look at other time frames. If that happens on a weekly chart, I can look at it by itself. Now, I like to look at the higher time frame and the lower time frame to help me, but that pattern in and of itself, if you find a sideways line that's quiet and you have low ADX, then you can buy breakouts and know that there's probably a pretty good trend to follow. Even if you're looking at like an hourly chart developing that way, yes, it can happen that way as well. The second pattern that I want to talk about is this two time frame pattern. And this period here where ADX has been rising, strong ADX on the higher time frame, and we keep getting these minor pullbacks. And what I'm looking for on the lower time frame daily are these low ADX readings during the pullback phase. So we get a pullback, we get a consolidation, we get another consolidation here. Notice this low ADX period. These are low ADX that are going counter to the bigger trend. And they're basically telling you that the pullback is probably going to be limited, that the bias is still to the upside. And then as I talked about last week, looking for that zero line reversal in this case on the MACD can help you with the timing of this. But if you get that low ADX into a low spot, you usually could draw a trend line on price and be on the lookout for a move to the upside. So I like to use this in conjunction with the higher time frame. I don't necessarily want to look at this by itself, because if I look at this by itself without the higher time frame, I don't really know what's going on. I can see that we're making higher highs and higher lows, but I do want to see where trend support is on the higher time frame. So those are the two ways that I would use ADX, low ADX in this situation. But both of them very powerful tools at helping you identify which stocks are attractive. And anyway, so I think it's a good thing to know. Let's go ahead and get into some stocks and do some analysis. Now, before I start going into the actual stock analysis, I do want to mention that I think a good screen, so there's two different types of screens you can run, and it's nice the way StockCharts editing works for the filter. You can actually do multiple time frames. So you could do like a weekly with strong ADX above 25 or 30 and have the daily be below 25. Or if looking for a longer term pattern, you could do the monthly is greater than 25 and the weekly chart is, or weekly ADX is below 25. So that's a good combination to kind of be on the lookout for. We have strong ADX on the higher time frame and low ADX on the lower time frame, which is telling you you've gone through a pullback or a consolidation in most cases. So just kind of a good thing to keep an eye on. Now, the other one is just a simple low ADX in a single time frame. You could pick like a weekly, and for that one you could actually just use the 1414 standard version of ADX in your screening and just put in below 20. If you put like below 16, then you'll really be zeroing in. It'll be fewer stocks, but it'll really be zeroing in on the ones that have that low ADX, real low ADX pattern. And it's pretty interesting to look at those. So let's go ahead and analyze Google while I have the chart up. And one of the things that I think is important is we got to recognize, number one, we've got a strong trend on the monthly chart. We've gotten a little extended from this line, and notice how the ADX has gotten up over 60. And notice also that the MACD has gotten stretched away from the zero line. So we have a strong trend on the monthly, but it's overbought. On the weekly chart, we have a pretty solid trend. We haven't gotten stretched away. We keep rallying up and pulling back, and actually haven't really completely pulled back to the 18 this year until the last week or two. And right now it looks like it's trying to hold, but we have lost a little bit of momentum. You can see the ADX has turned down and the MACD has turned down from an overbought condition. So I'm of the opinion that this is probably going to have to channel a little bit. There was pretty good overrun on the daily MACD and a little bit of red DI showing some sellers showing up. So I bet this channel sideways. I don't think there's a significant amount of downside risk unless we break the 18-week. But it might not be ready to get up and going right away. So just thought I'd cover that while I'm on it. Let's go to Six Flags, SIX. So I like what's going on here because let's zero in on the monthly chart. So we had this big down move, and one of the things that I want you to recognize is see this massive amount of this massive decline. We have a big move to the downside, and you get this huge red ADX move, the red DI. And that's tough to overcome. It takes a little while, especially on a monthly chart. Even though we've spent a decent amount of time rallying, it's hard to get this ADX back and going in the other direction when you have that much ADX to overcome. So now it's starting to shift back. And, when I look at this, I'm kind of thinking we broke the downtrend line. And now we have a rising 18-month, and we've been pulling back and consolidating, kind of forming a pinch play on the monthly chart. So I like it from that standpoint. Now, you can see that we've got some resistance in the upper 40s, right around 50. It's been a fairly important level, and we failed at it again. So that is something we have to consider right now. But I do like the consolidation pattern on the weekly chart. We're getting a zero line pullback. Looks like it wants to reverse at the zero line. We have low ADX. So, it's getting there. I'd love to see a little bit more confirmation. Looks like the daily is trying to turn up, but if you notice, we didn't get much confirmation on the ADX, and we have low ADX on the weekly and we have low ADX on the monthly. So I kind of like to see improving ADX on the lower time frame to tell me things are getting going again. But I do like the overall pattern. Certainly one I'd have on a watch list and keep a close eye on it. INGR. So another request here, and notice what's going on. And I want to make sure you recognize these patterns where we have a declining, with the start of the declining 18-month, it goes all the way down 2-3 years to the downside. And now not only is it turning up, but price is coming back and respecting that line for the first time in the form of a pinch. So that is I think, pretty encouraging as a starting point that we've got some signs of a turnaround. Now, we've got the big round number at 100, and it has provided resistance over the last year or so. So we have to keep that in mind as well. I like the turn that's trying to develop on the weekly chart. But I think what I would do is I would try and get an entry. Now that the ADX has started to move up on the daily chart, I'd look for an entry a little bit closer to the 18 because I know I've got that resistance looming up around 100. So I want to make it worth my while just in case that's all there is. It's just a move up into the high 90s. So make sure you've got good risk reward if you want to play this. But I do think that the bigger picture pattern is trying to turn around. If we can get through 100, then there could be some pretty good upside in this. American Airlines, I did want to follow up on this. I believe I spoke on this. Actually, I spoke on it in a couple other shows. But so what I wanted to show is we've got this declining 18-month line here that is now turning to the upside. And we're showing signs of a turnaround on the bigger picture. I could draw on the downtrend line, right? But what's missing here at this point is that we still have a declining 18-week. And even though we got above this line, we didn't create any distance. A lot of times when you get a strong move to the upside, you'll get a little air pocket that forms where price will be moving up away and it'll get disconnected from the moving average. And then when you pull back to it, you have a higher probability of holding. We never got that air. Every one of these bars was stayed connected and this line is still declining. Now that's not necessarily a big negative, but it might need a little bit more time. Maybe it comes back here. The next time it kind of works its way back up, we should get a crossover of the signal line and hopefully some improvement in green DI. And if we get both of those taking place, then I think we're going to get a legitimate turn and maybe a move up into that high 20s, maybe up towards 30. BCS. So nice turn developing. We got improvement on the monthly chart. And I think it is important to recognize when we're getting a zero line cross for the first time, both lines are above the zero line on the monthly chart for the first time since way back in 2014. Okay, so I think that's an encouraging sign. Now, that doesn't mean it's a timely buy, but we're getting signs of legitimate improvement when I see that. Now, what I see here on the weekly chart is that unfortunately, it didn't spend enough time going sideways, I don't think, to really complete the consolidation pattern. And that part is partly due to the fact that the MACD didn't make it all the way down to the zero line. With that said, what did take place is we have a higher bottom here and a lower bottom here. So it was a zero line reversal pattern. It's just a little awkward the way it turned and went. And so I think this is an encouraging pattern, don't get me wrong, but it might spend a little bit more time consolidating around this 10, 11 area before it's really ready to take off. I don't see the green DI kicking in quite yet, but overall, this is a pretty solid pattern. We've got room up to about 13 and a half would be the target area for that one. Let's look at PCH. So strong move to the upside on the monthly chart. It didn't really register on an ADX basis, and more discouraging for me is that it didn't really register on a DI basis. So a lot of times we get that lag with the ADX, but if the green DI comes up like this and pops up and holds like that, then I'm less discouraged by a low ADX pattern if I'm getting the green DI to show up. But at this point, it's still a little on the early side when I'm looking at the DI and the ADX. Now, with that said, we've got a pullback here that is a pinch play, and that could lead to a trading move back up to this prior peak. Now, look at that big red bar that we've got on the monthly chart. That's telling me there's going to be some resistance in the mid to high 50 area, maybe up towards 60. So if I'm going to play this, I got to play it off the daily chart, maybe even go down to the hourly if I want to do it that way. I mean, the chart is set up to trade higher. I think we are going to get up towards that 60 level, but you can see the gap down in the selling. So these guys haven't had a chance to sell yet. So we want to get a move back up into that region and expect them to sort of use that as a selling chance. LPX. So this is a high-level consolidation. So what I mean by that is when I go to the monthly chart, we have a strong move to the upside and we're working sideways and consolidating. We've got a strong pattern in terms of momentum, but we didn't work all the way back to the 18-month line. So it's more of like a high-level price action consolidation where you're not coming all the way back to trend support. But the overall pattern is very strong. ADX reached a peak of around 60 on the weekly chart, and we did move sideways. And, we didn't make it all the way down to the zero line, but, this is a pretty encouraging pattern. We had a pretty strong reversal up there in the low 70s. So I would expect some resistance up there, but this is a strong pattern and no real signs of sellers through the correction phase on the weekly chart. A red DI never got above 25. So the bulls are still in command on this one. EVR, another high-level consolidation. Just want to keep this in mind. Even though we're not coming back to the 18-month line, we had a strong move to the upside and then a consolidation pattern of 1, 2, 3 month, 3, 4 months going sideways or pulling back. And that's a pinch play, and that just triggered on the monthly chart. The weekly had this sideways consolidation and then sort of abruptly got going, but very strong pattern. We already had low ADX. We had a reverse divergence here where MACD made a lower low and the price made a higher low. So you could have been on the lookout for a breakout pattern here around 145, maybe a little bit earlier. Now at this point, I would just watch for the next pullback. We've got ADX about to cross 25. So look for the next pullback in this one as a buying opportunity. Let's look at Sailpoint because we talked about this a couple months ago, and I was saying we needed to let this consolidate, and then we were looking for a trigger on the weekly chart, and we want to keep being patient and wait for the trigger. Now, as I mentioned back then, we had this overrun of the zero line, and a lot of times it takes a little bit more time to get going, and that's what's been taking place, working sideways, but it's not breaking down. And so we're actually showing a little bit of improvement when you look at the histogram. Notice the divergence that's developed there. Even though this is working sideways, we've got a little bit of a divergence developing from that standpoint. So I'm sort of encouraged by that. We still have low ADX. We don't have signs of sellers showing up. So I would be, if I wanted to be an aggressive guy in this one, I'd probably be doing, I've got a trend line break. I'd probably look for a little bit more of a move up and then some kind of a higher low. I'd like to see the green DI kind of confirm that, but this would be very attractive, and I would be willing to do that if I got green DI showing up on the daily chart on a 1, 2, 3 type of a pattern, making a higher low like that. I'd do that even though we haven't crossed back above the 40 on the weekly. Now, the reason why I did these two in order for a reason. Sales showed if you're patient and you're waiting, that you can see a trend start to turn, and it's possible that sales going to kick into gear. But the reason why I wait and I don't just buy at the 18-month is because sometimes they just don't trigger and they just keep dropping and going lower. And this is how this is why we use multiple time frames. I mean, we want to use multiple time frames for this reason. Now, there's really no reason to be looking at this stock. I think there's a lot of damage done. Now, yes, there's probably some support here if you want to do a little trade back to 90 or something like that. Maybe there's something there, but I don't do that. I'm looking for trend continuation or trend plays, and we just don't have that here. I think there's way too much resistance now in the mid to high 90s. Now, IPI, this is really interesting what's going on. This had a reverse divergence. I'm going to keep coming back to this since I spent time on this last week. I want to make sure I'm bringing this up now when it shows up. We had a lower low in MACD, a higher low here. So this is telling you, you want to be on the lookout for an upturn. We had low ADX in place, but notice how red DI could not even get above green DI through this whole consolidation. That tells you your bias is to the upside and you want to continue to look for improvement to the upside. So when I see that, I'm very encouraged. Now we kind of got to move now. Now the ADX has gotten going on the daily. Watch for the next pullback, maybe turn towards this 37.5 area, which is the last breakout level. Let's look at Weyerhaeuser because this made a nice move to the upside and then pulled back on the monthly, sort of forming a pinch. What's missing here is the ADX on the monthly, and again, no green DI. So if we had green DI, I'd be kind of encouraged and think, okay, we might break out through 40. Now I'm of the opinion that it's not really likely that we do that on the first try. So this is why I look at the higher time frame first before looking at the lower time frame, because the weekly chart looks really attractive. Look at this zero line reversal with low ADX and no sign of sellers. Yeah, we're probably trading up towards 40, maybe 41, maybe testing this high. So yeah, if you want to trade it, maybe so, but based on the monthly, I'd be less attracted. I'm looking for the stocks that have power behind the moves and they have real potential, you know, that could go up over the next 6 to 12 months. And I just don't see that in this one right now. I think it's going to take more time. So I'm glad we got a request for a energy stock because what's going on here I think is pretty important. Now, we start with the monthly. We had this pullback and we held the now this one is different. Look at how we don't have ADX moving up, but look at how the green DI has gotten going for the first time in years. We had a few times where green got above and then couldn't hold, but this got above and held right around the 25 area and turned up right as we were pinching on this pullback. And I wanted to bring this up again. I know this was a stock I'd covered recently, but I wanted to explain that now we've broken out here and we've got good ADX. Watch for any kind of a pullback towards 180. We should get some kind of a minor setback. If we get that, I would really be encouraged and I'd be very interested. As long as the pullback is orderly, I think this could look pretty attractive. So FIVN is pulling back to the 18-month line. It was kind of a harsh pullback. I mean, let's just zero in on this chart. Look at the size of this big red bar. So when I see that, the first thing I'm going to do is kind of mark off the midpoint of that bar, because I know that's pretty important. So we had this big red bar. I'm kind of thinking until we get back above that level, it might be kind of tough. And then the other thing I want to point out is, yeah, we're holding a rising 18-month, but we had a little bit of a breakdown here. Now, if this turns into a undercut and rally, what we're going to want to see now is a move up and then kind of a higher low form. It might be easier to see on the daily chart, but that's really what we're looking for. It undercut this bottom. Okay, and now we're trying to rally up. But we don't have enough confirmation without some kind of a little hesitation move. And I want to see a little bit of a turn in the MACD as well. Actually, be preferable to see green DI do something. But the fact of the matter is we're in a zone where we want to watch this, especially because we undercut the 150 level and we're turning back up. However, because of this harsh move to the downside, and we know we've got some resistance around 180, you got to be pretty careful about just jumping right back in this. LPLA, so another financial that made a nice move to the upside, had this pullback, and then it was really a pullback in the indicators and more of a sideways pattern in the price. So, you know, when I see that, it's actually a very encouraging sign. The fact that this is broken out, though, now I'd want to get a pullback towards this 160 area as my next entry point. It's a little overbought, a little stretched away from the 18-week to be a buyer at this point. But notice the rising ADX on the monthly. So it's okay that this has not come back all the way to the 18-month. So really a lot of good action in the financials. I just think they need to pull back one more time to really offer another buying opportunity. Well, that's all the stocks we have time for today. Keep sending in those stock requests. And feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is listed. Have a great week.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.